how to trade this failure pattern. Hi, it's Charlie giving you Saturday's video. I hope you're very well. So what we're going to look at today is a failure pattern. So essentially what happens is you get good news come out in the market. So you get a good economic news release. Good as in it should be deemed to be beneficial to a market. I've got the dollar index up here. I'm also going to go and have a look at the S&P as well, and I'm going to look at the euro dollar in this video too. So what we've seen today is a day where the news that came out, so we had retail sales that came out today. So they were slated to come in at about an increase of 0.8%, but they came in at 1%. Okay, so the headline figure is that it was a beat. Now, if you get a beat, but then the market, so you've got effectively good news, so it's solid for the economy, but then the market sells off. So I'm looking at this dollar index here. Obviously, I don't know how this is going to close yet, so you would use this pretty much on a closing basis. But if this dollar index sells off here, then you can take that as, okay, a good news day, but the market hasn't held on to it. And so this market, the dollar index, hasn't held on to what something that should be seen to be good news. Now, of course, we all know the reason why the dollar's selling off, and that's because although So firstly, you would take this and say, well, surely that's good news. Surely the dollar should strengthen because that means the economy is even stronger, which means that the Federal Reserve might hike rates maybe even higher, or they hike by a larger amount at the next FOMC meeting. So the assumption is that the market, if we have a beat on an economic release like that, is that the market goes higher. Okay, but if we sell off and we close down, then we can take that as a failure pattern. And a failure pattern is when you get a good news day, but the market sells off anyway. So why is it selling off? Why are we seeing that on the dollar? As it turns out, there's some news around. We've had a couple of Fed speakers who have who are hawkish Fed speakers who've just backed off a little bit from this rhetoric of potentially 100 basis point rate hike and sticking to that 75 basis point, which is sort of slated in for the next FOMC meeting. So the market effectively is backing away. Even though we had those retail sales out there, there's actually other stuff going on. So it's a good news day, supposedly for the dollar, but the dollar ends up selling off. Now let's go and have a look at a couple of other markets here, if I can do this. So let's now go and have a look at the S&P. And if we look at the S&P is cheering this news. So, but it's not just that data there. So you would say, well, normally the S&P, surely it would cheer a stronger economic data, but at the moment it's not tending to be like that, because stronger economic data would normally translate into an even more hawkish Federal Reserve, which then translates to higher interest rates, which the stock market doesn't like. But the market's actually cheering today again because of a couple of Fed speakers that we've had today and yesterday who have just backed away a little bit from being as hawkish as they might have otherwise been. So we've got a day whereby otherwise, in another context, the S&P might actually be selling off on the basis of that good news because of the potential for higher interest rates, but because actually there's some other ripples beneath the surface that it hasn't. And it's actually, so far at the time I'm recording this, nearly 5 o'clock, as we can see, it's having a good day. We don't know if it's going to finish that way yet, but if it does, then it's, like I said, it's a failure pattern, a failure based on the news that's come out, and the markets have done something else. And it's exactly the same with the euro against the dollar as well. So the euro against the dollar, so In theory, the dollar should have been strengthening against the euro here and against other currencies, and yet the euro's having a really nice relief bounce and rally here. So do look into that, these failure patterns. When you do get fundamentally what should be either a good news day fundamentally or bad news coming through, and whatever that news is, the market shrugs it off and goes the other way, it's something to look into. There you go. There's your weekend video. I hope you're really well, and stay safe out there with all this super heat wave that we've got here in the UK and elsewhere around the world. And I'll be back in touch next week.